Yo, what's up guys, it's Austin, and I wanted to do a little something a little more off script today. I'm used to, putting a lot of time into producing these videos and, making sure every word is concrete, but a lot of you have been asking for like some kind of... I almost dropped my paper. A lot of you guys have been wanting something a little more spoilery in terms of Persona 5 stuff, so I figured I'd, give you guys my extended thoughts, some kind of spoiler discussion. There's a lot. There's a whole hell of a lot with Persona 5, and it'd be really hard to squeeze into like one video, so I just want to talk about some of the things that I thought were like super cool about the game. I assume that you've all played it at this point, considering it says spoiler discussion on the video. I got my little pillow and my notes here, so I'm cozy. You fucking get cozy too, bitch. I did not know what to expect when starting this game off, especially with the beginning and everything like that, because I had gone, once I made those old videos, I'd gone completely blind on pretty much anything that was going to happen from that point. So when I turned on the game and I'm just immediately in the fucking heist, I was like, okay, this is a little different. Right off the bat, it kind of sets this precedence of the rise and the fall of the Phantom Thieves. That's going to be happening from the second you turn on the game. They set it up, one of your friends has betrayed you, so you're like, oh shit, this is going to be some kind of murder mystery VN like Persona 4 Danganronpa, but they didn't do that, and I thought that was really cool. I don't think I've played many games, especially Japanese RPGs, that kind of start with everyone hates you at the beginning. I'm used to hopping into a Tales of game or a Final Fantasy, and I'm like, ooh, I'm mysterious, and I'm the one that hates everybody. Everyone's so interested in me. But in Persona 5, it's just like, what is this shit kid doing here? The teachers, Kamoshida and Kawakami? What is it? I'm bad at remembering names, I'm sorry. Kawakami is just like, I have to deal with this piece of shit. Why me? And you find out later more about her character, which we'll get into. But, having the principal and everyone else treat you like a burden, I'm just like, man. And that's like a really cool change of pace from most JRPGs. Going from there, you reach the first palace and everything, and you're dealing with Ryuji, and it's all your standard Persona mystery fanfare bullshit. It's fine. Really, it's nothing special, minus the fact that the presentation and the storytelling is super unique. It's with previous RPGs, it's textbooks, blah blah blah. This is happening. But the way the UI is laid out, and the way text comes in, character flash frames of animation will come in and stuff like that. It really brought this super unique thing that I've not really seen before. It's kind of like reading a comic book or playing a comic book, but with the Japanese anime art style. So it was really cool to see that in motion. And of course we have our first villain, Kamoshida. He is a piece of shit, man. Okay, so they could have, by all means, stretched the entirety of Persona 5 out into just dealing with Kamoshida, having him slowly terrorize the school or something like that, kind of like Persona 4 did with its main secondary villain. And they could have very easily made an entire game about solving the mystery of the school, but they went on a bigger scope this time, which I appreciate, because Kamoshida was great. I love, well, when I say great, I don't mean he was good. I mean, he's a piece of shit, but it was a good villain because of that. He didn't have any redeeming qualities. He was a piece of shit teacher, and he treated everyone like shit, like his castle, if you would. I don't think anyone was expecting Persona 5 to open with rape and sexual assault. That was fucking crazy. Man, when that shit went down, I was just like, whew, what are they doing? That took me by surprise, to say the least. They didn't really take any second to glamorize Kamoshida with that. They were like, all right, well, you're a piece of shit. I do think that they kind of skirted around the issue a bit too much, because I think it's heavily implied that Kamoshida raped Shiho and was beating the other students. But when it came time to when he broke down and did the thing at the school, he's like, I sexually harassed students, and it's hard to find a solid definition on what that means, and they don't really explicitly say it in the game, when I think they should. I think they kind of jumped out of that one a little too soon, I think. But going back slightly, when you talk about his boss fight and everything like that, whew, that was some kick-ass music, man. Like, I think the track's called Blooming Villain, having the guitars come in, where it's like doing all that shit, like that sticks with you. They introduced the concept of each boss having its own challenge instead of just being, oh, this is the boss where you have to, like, make sure you have reflect. You're gonna get killed. They did that with the dungeons as well, by making them all super unique. Kamoshida's was kind of basic at first. The thing that stood out to me was that, like, stealth mechanics, right? So, like, that was the introduction of that. But as they go on, like with Kanashiro's dungeon being in the bank and having, like, the security vault where you have to actually decipher the code, if you would, even though it was pretty easy. And I think they should have maybe gone a little further with that. I think that was like the perfect way to handle the dungeons in this game. I gotta say, Makoto following you with the magazine, it's like the best little character detail they could have ever possibly done. It was so freaking good. Hopefully this isn't too rambly and terrible. It's very hard to tell. I don't really have too much to say about Madarame. It was definitely like a really interesting story that they told with him being the villain for a little bit, but I feel like after everything that happened with Kamoshida, that it was there specifically to tame down what was happening. I thought the reveal that he essentially let Yusuke's mother die and that he painted over the Sayuri was really good. Yusuke's great. He's a good boy. Especially when he's holding those lobsters and Futaba's like trying to grab him. Goofy ass motherfucker. I love Yusuke. Now on to Dungeon 4, or the Medjet Dungeon, with Futaba, or Alibaba as it was called before. You know, when you think of Persona and dungeons, you think of a dungeon. They started it kind of with Kanashiro's dungeon, what with the bank being in the sky in the middle of the city, so it kind of revealed that like the metaverse and the cognition wasn't necessarily just a certain area, but it was how they see the entire city around them. It was cool because like Kamoshida's palace was just the school, when everything else in like Kanashiro's palace, they kind of revealed like, oh, it can be much more than that, with the ATM dudes walking around being like, help me. But with Futaba's dungeon, I really liked that the palace, like, they didn't really know what the outside world looked like, because Futaba, as you know, was agoraphobic. Having her willingly be invaded, if you would, kind of flipped it upside down, because at that point you had done 3 dungeons back to back where it was like a fight for survival, your standard JRPG thing, and then it's like, okay, well, I want you to do this to me because I cannot function. But it was cool to, you know, go to the dungeon and then have to go to the city nearby, so like it made certain areas of the game and certain dungeons feel less like dungeons and more just like, this is this part of the game, instead of, you know, like, gotta go into the crypt. Much more than that. As for the actual dungeon, I thought it was good. I really like the music. I don't remember the name of the track that plays with Futaba's dungeon. I think it's like the days when my mother was there. Very sad. It was pretty obvious from all the trailers and everything that Futaba was going to be like the support character, but I think that her flying around that UFO and shit, and that particular boss battle against the shadow of her mom was pretty crazy. Scale is always real cool, and having to like alternate between your characters in order to change the direction of the crossbow was pretty rad. I just like the battle system, man. Press turn's fucking great. It's pretty easy. It's not like the most forgiving or anything like that, but it is very, very slick, and it feels right. When you're doing your normal battles, you'll take everyone down like super quick, but when you're in those boss battles like against Futaba's mom, it's like, oh shit, we have a lot to do. Everything is different now. Typically then, you're not fighting with weaknesses, you're fighting for survival. Resource management, man, it's crazy. Speaking of resource management, I did every dungeon in the minimum time required, because I just stuck with it, except for one. I didn't grind, I didn't do the Reaper grind or anything like that, so like, I was completely exhausted of all of my resources every single time. It was very stressful. It was very like, whoo, I'm gonna die. But I made it through. That message is brought to you completely by Shikioji. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that you get Shikioji so early in that game. Speaking of characters, Goro Akechi man. Akechi man? I think it was pretty obvious he was gonna be a bad guy. They made a mistake by naming him Akechi, which is 2 letters away from Adachi, and making him a very similar character in appearance. But Persona 5's not a whodunit, you know? Persona 5 is how they done it. It's different. Because with Persona 5, you know you're gonna fall. You know something bad's gonna happen. And if you're not really dumb, you'll pick up on the pancake thing, like, when it happens immediately. So you're like, okay, well, he can definitely hear Morgana. Oh no, who's the bad guy? Who's that gonna be?
I thought I heard something about delicious pancakes.
In the Atlas guidelines that they gave everybody for streaming and everything, they're like, don't talk about a certain bored detective. Way to spoil the game in your own freaking post. Stupid. But the game was about so much more than who done it and stuff like that. Like I said, it's about the rise and the fall, and a lot of that happens, I think, in Okumura's dungeon. Or Haru's dungeon, whatever you want to call it. I bolted through that dungeon, man. I haphazardly did that. I missed chest. I think it was because I was like pretty ready to see what happened next and everything. Maybe it was just due to the theming of the game at that point, which was just like, hurry up and do this, hurry up and do this. Which, you know, all the people were telling you in the fan site and all the loading screens, and even the cast members are like, what are we waiting for? Let's go save Haru when you beat him. Which was probably the weakest boss fight in my opinion. You know, it's just like waves and waves of enemies. Even though it was pretty cool when you hit Okumura and he just falls over. It's like, oh, well. I do think it's strange though. A lot of the villains did kind of blend together at times in their motives and what they were saying. I know that was just the shadows, and like a lot of their personalities come from taking their shadows and their outward selves and like comparing them. Because, you know, Kamoshida was very two-faced. Madarame was very two-faced. Kanashiro was just kind of the same in both. He was like, I'm a big gangster man and I'm bad. And then when you go to a shadow, he's like, I'm an insect gangster man and I'm also bad. And you're like, okay, well, Makoto's gonna beat the shit out of you anyway. And she did. She did. Someone tweeted at me the other day saying, I'm glad you're part of the Queen's Guard, and I lost my shit. I was like, the Queen's Guard. I've never heard the term. I guess, I don't know if you guys have heard the term, but it makes sense because she's queen in her outfit and everything like that. But I was the Queen's Guard. Whew. Oh boy. But yeah, by the time you finish the Okumura dungeon and you see him his shadow get killed by the Black Mask, whatever they're calling him, you knew from that exact second, like, oh, well, here's the downfall. What's gonna happen? You got blamed for murder. You did the bad thing now. I guess we should try to figure out what happened, because now everyone hates us. And who steps up to the plate but Goro Akechi? Very obvious. It was very, very, who's gonna betray you? Now you're at Sai's dungeon. By the way, Sai in her shadow form it's pretty good. You know, your hot lawyer mama in her, frankly, Batman villain outfit. Actually, I think that dungeon might have been my favorite. It had, like, I think the song is called Whims of Fate. It was like this groovy vocal track. That was fun. And having to deal with the casino chips was, like, super rad. I did feel like it went on a little bit too long, but, you know, that's Shin Megami Tensei. You go from Joker as a leader, let's do what he has to say, or Morgana is like leading the influence. From like, oh, here's Goro Akechi, man. Going back 1 second, I'm sorry I missed this. I really liked that there was a lot of tension between Morgana and everybody, especially when you get Futaba, because Futaba kind of takes over Morgana's role. And you know, Ryuji is kind of a piece of shit there. He's like, oh, Morgana, you're so useless. But I hear a lot of people bitching about that. But they also don't remember that, like, the first, like, 20 hours of the game is Morgana calling Ryuji useless constantly, all the time. I mean, if you miss an attack as Ryuji, like, Morgana's literally like, oh, you're so useless. I think Futaba does that too, even. Actually, now that I think about it. Everyone's so mean to Ryuji. You just kind of deserves it. Anyway, moving forward, back to Sai's dungeon. You know what's gonna happen. You know, you like the second you see that place, you're like, okay, here's the beginning of the game. Here they're gonna get captured. And they kind of alluded to what was gonna happen with Joker having the drug flashbacks and everything like that, where certain scenes were like taken out. I wasn't like super surprised, but seeing Goro Akechi go from, you know, this character who was just like, oh, I'm a nice boy detective, everybody loves me, haha, I'm pretty, to the fucking psychopath that he was nice. I think part of that was due to Robbie Damon's voice acting. So good, man. Like, they're not afraid to yell. Like, I've played a lot of games where they're afraid to yell and they're like, oh, I'm gonna get you. Robbie Damon was just like, Persona! It's gross. That's what it was. Finding out how you got captured was neat. You have to follow up with Futaba there, but she explains like the specifics of how they got pre-recorded text messages onto this phone that you were going to give Sai that went off at a certain time, and then that Metaverse app would activate. It was a little convoluted, maybe a little dumb, but you knew when you started the game what you were leading into, and after this scene happened, when Akechi came in and just like murdered the cognition of Joker, that everything forward from there, you didn't know what the fuck was gonna happen. And that's what I thought was really cool, because they all brought it together with Shido. Not Shiho, Shido, and his fucking bald ass head, the man who got you sued in the first place, the man who started this whole thing. It's his fault. I kind of saw that coming too. I mean, because they show Shido so early in the game, I think it's a little dumb that Joker's like, who was that? Who could that possibly be? And it takes him a while to realize it's the same guy. But obviously, a politician is running scenes. Didn't know Atlas was planning a political statement with Persona 5, but they did it. At that point, having to walk around as Joker with your hood on was the shit. I thought that was super fun and a really interesting way to do things. It's really neat to take everything you knew at that point and then just flip it on its head and be like, okay, new game. Not really a new game. Although I will say I'm disappointed that they did not allow the player to do anything with their time at the beginning of the day when school's taking place, because you think they would at least, at the very, very least, allow you to study, play video games, or build tools to do something with that whole slot that is missing. I think that was a bit of an oversight. I mean, they could have even had like a social link be doable, like Sojiro's at that point, but they didn't. Considering Futaba isn't in school, But yeah, I think a lot of the social links wouldn't trigger at that point because they wanted me. I got to the calling card part of Shido's dungeon, and then it was like, we're not gonna hang out with you. Like, a lot of my social links would not activate at all for like a week. Well, I guess I gotta do this, or I'm gonna lose all these days. So I'm pretty sure I lost a lot. I also lost a lot of time on Sojiro at the beginning. I gotta talk to him. I can't make coffee. I gotta increase Coffee Daddy. I will say, I think Shido's dungeon was probably the weakest. That dungeon is long as fuck until the end of it. I'll get into that, but when I say it's long, I mean because you spend a lot of time in those rat dungeons where you like you walk and then suddenly you're turned into a rat. I thought that was more annoying than fun. I mean, it was cool having to like go into the air ducts, and you know, like having to navigate around instead of fighting everything in sight, which I did. So much for a stealth game, dude. I just attacked everybody. When you're like going through it and you're fighting all the bosses and getting all the recommendations to go see Shido, I'm just kind of like, okay, that's one. That took that long. But the encounter with Akechi at the end was so good. There are scenes where you're like, you're finding out that Shido is Akechi's daddy. Shido's a bad dad. So he's like, I gotta prove to my dad that I'm valuable so that I can kill him. I understand the logic there, but do what you gotta do, man. I mean, at this point, you already know that Akechi's the bad guy, and that he was the one who's been killing people. You don't know how many. Turns out he's killed a shit ton of people. But the encounter with him, when you learn that he is like opposite Joker, kind of like Soji is opposite Adachi in Persona 4, I think that's like a super good way to pull everything together. Well, they do this really good in combat because he predominantly targets Joker. And I had Shikioji. Half of his attacks are melee and curse. He would just keep swinging at Joker, and I was like, bitch, I'm good. I thought I was gonna like have a hard time and have the fight be like super intense, but Shikioji made it pretty freaking easy. And that can't be helped because I mean, I used him. I could have not, but I was like, well, I'm kind of low on restorative items, and if I don't use him, there's a distinct possibility that I'm going to die. But it's, okay, I think it's a really strong moment. Shido's cognition of Akechi comes out and it's just like, I'm a cold-ass killer. You're gonna fucking die. And they close the gate, and there's 2 gunshots. I assume he's dead. Maybe there will be a Persona 5 Platinum that comes out, and everyone is like, oh, if you raise his social link naturally, then he lives. But I don't think that's the case, and I think that would be bad. You send out that final calling card, and it's the most badass shit in the world. Futaba hijacks the airwaves, and it's just like, yo, we're the Phantom Thieves. We're here to stay. We're gonna take out Shiho, this guy who is, by the way, about to be Prime Minister of Japan. He's like, oh no, the Phantom Thieves, and everyone's like, oh no, the Phantom Thieves, and it's like, it's building up into this really cool moment, and then you fight Shido, and you're like, Oh, he's Char for some reason. He looks like a Gundam antagonist. I don't know why. I'll take it. It's better than some of the other Shadow costumes. It was a little goofy though. Oh, he's my son, I figured. Oh well, I was gonna fucking kill him anyway. You're like, oh, that guy's he's a bad person. And you fight him, and the best song in the fucking game starts playing, Rivers in the Desert. Oh my god, that is the best. I literally drive around listening to that song in my car every day now. Like, I can't stop. That boss fight is intense though, man. They do the Dragon Ball Z thing of, this isn't even my final form, but in such like a cool way, because he doesn't even really transform. He's just like, I'm wearing my armor, boom, now I'm not because my muscles are big, and then he gets bigger. And then he's like Shin Shido or whatever, and he's got his fucking hands in the air like a claw formation, and he gets more turns. He like actively gets more turns per turn. I was sweating the whole fucking time. I was sweating. Good fight, good song, everything about the end of that dungeon is fan-fucking-tastic. There's a whole fake out with Ryuji's death, and a really good character moment, because a lot of his character arc is rooted in Kamoshida near the beginning, where he has his leg broken, and they're presented in this situation where he has to get off the ship. Everyone's freaking out, like, oh, we're actually gonna die here, because Shido came up with a pill that temporarily kills you, or some crazy... It's stupid. And his palace begins to crumble while they're in his cognition, his metaverse. It's very complicated. There's this moment where he lands after doing this crazy jump, and he punches his knee. Because he's like, all right, let's do this, let's go. And he runs up and he grabs the thing and he saves the day. Then he explodes and you're like, oh no, Ryuji, oh no. And it's actually really sad. They don't let that play out very long though, because he's like, ah man, what's up? That sucked. Let's just beat him up, even though we were real sad about him a second ago, because we can't show any affection in Persona 5. Everything has to be miserable. I figured it wasn't going to be the end of the game. We hadn't seen any of the series staple supernatural fucking god shit come out yet. But nothing really happens once Shido confesses to his crimes. So you don't really know what's going on. It creates this weird empty feeling in the game, the characters, and the player, honestly, because you have this big upswing about your victory, and then it's for naught. Like, nothing is happening. And here's when the god stuff kicks in. And you know what? I actually kind of called the main villain here Igor. I only really thought about this because his Japanese voice actor unfortunately passed away. When you boot up the game in English, it is a different voice actor still. And I'm like, why did they change the English voice actor? They didn't necessarily have to do that. They had kept Igor with his English voice actor for other games, but for Persona 5, they just changed him all of a sudden. Well, as it turns out, he's not actually Igor. He is, Yaldabaoth? Jaldabaoth. I can't fucking pronounce it. And like I said, I called that it was Igor, and I was talking with my friend GC Positive, who you should check out his channel. He makes good shit. He was a little bit ahead of me, and we'd been talking back and forth. I'm like, oh, it's Igor. It's gotta be fucking Igor. I know it's Igor. And he was like, Austin, in just all capital letters. And I was like, Yaldabaoth. Something. It doesn't matter. He's a fucking angry-ass god. I'm not really into all the deep lore of these mythological gods and stuff like that and what they represent and everything. Oh, also, Justine and Caroline are the same person, and Igor split them up. But it's actually the Holy Grail, who's Yaldabaoth. It's fucking Shin Megami Tensei. The game does okay, I think this Persona game did this better than any one that I've played, where it feels like Persona, and then the very last chapter, arc, really feels like Shin Megami Tensei. This game got dark. You get to the bottom of Metaverse. You're dealing with the stuff with Morgana, who's like questioning their own existence and like, am I human? Who am I? What are my memories? Nothing is happening. You get to the bottom of a Mementos, and suddenly it's like everything fucking sucks. The Metaverse starts slowly just taking over all of humanity, and everything is just going to shit, and it's scary, and everyone dies. You think everyone dies. Everyone disappears. And it is a very intense moment. I got a little choked up a little bit because of the parts where like people were fading and then they like looked at Joker and started screaming and then just disappeared. And I was like, oh fuck, that's scary. One of the things they talk about is that humanity doesn't like change. Humanity is okay with the status quo. It's okay with corruption and stuff like that. And the Phantom Thieves represented fighting against the status quo or rebelling. The whole theme of the game is standing up for yourself. When you're a social outcast, standing up for yourself, you're gonna run into fucking problems, and people are gonna be like, look at these problematic, troublesome fools, better ignore them, and they did. Since the metaverse took over humanity, hell became part of Earth itself, and people were just ignoring everything around them. I'm probably butchering the ending here. And here's where you run into Mara. You can catch him. He's a big dick monster. He's my favorite persona. You fight through this final dungeon, which is pretty much hell. You learn the origins of Morgana, where he was created specifically by Igor, and what I assume is something similar to the Velvet Room attendants. And from there, it's time to stop a fucking god. It's not uncommon for JRPGs, it's not. It's actually one of the more common, I would even say generic plot points that a JRPG can do. I mean, Chrono Trigger did it. Persona 3 and 4 did it. You fight some type of celestial being that has its influence all over humanity, and the world is at stake and shit. So the whole game has this theme with the 7 deadly sins that kind of like shows up in the achievements, where you're fighting, whenever you tackle a palace, it's like the Palace of Lust or something like that, and each one of the main villains represents a different one of the 7 deadly sins. And when you're fighting Yaldabaoth, he uses that on you. And it's very dramatic, and it's very crazy. I don't know, I just love his voice. It's just like, this is the 7th deadly sin of me and lost. Fantastic final boss. I actually really dig the final boss theme quite a bit. It's like this progressive rock track that reminds me a lot of like Digital Devil Saga. It was super cool. Right when you think everything's about to go to shit, in any anime, JRPG, tropey tradition, finally believe in the existence of the Phantom Thieves and want to live for their own sake and not be with the status quo. It's a little ham-fisted with the fan site app like counting. Suddenly the electronic program, it was in people's brains the whole time or something, I don't fucking know. And Joker uses the power of humanity and all the spirits around him to summon Satanael and kill Yaldabaoth once and for all. So quite literally, Satan saved Christmas, because it's on Christmas Eve. It's pretty good. It was pretty satisfying, the music there kicking in, fucking shooting him with this like humanity gun or whatever it was, just reaping gods. And then once again, you don't quite get your happy ending. Not right away. Reality hits and Sai comes up and is like, they're gonna want to arrest somebody because some shit went down and people still know that the Phantom Thieves are a bunch of hooligans who committed criminal acts like trespassing and hijacking television airwaves. And they're still in trouble for murder, technically. Sai comes up to you and it's like, yo, you gotta go to prison, man. You gotta get out of here. So you get to spend one night with one of your girls and Makoto. I thought that was a really strong scene because your character's trying to act like everything's normal. But all of the dialogue choices that you get imply that it's not fine, you know? Giving a little bit of personality to Joker, and regardless of whatever selection you make, it ends with like you left them worried because you're not telling them that you're getting arrested, otherwise something might happen. So you're in jail. You get arrested after beating the final boss. And, oh yeah, rewind. Morgana dies because the metaverse disappears. Very sad moment, especially the cinematic fading away and everyone's like panicking and stuff like that. Like, no, Morgana, no. And I was a little choked up by that. I loved Morgana as a character, actually. I thought of all the characters in the game, Morgana had some of the most character development. Because, I mean, it's your typical amnesia kitty, or is that typical? Amnesia kitties? And seeing them fade away was it was very sad. That happens, and then you get arrested. So it like immediately feels like, oh, there is no happy ending in this game. But your friends come together, and your friends and your social links, who actually, when you max out social links during the final boss fight, you get to see them trying to speak up for you. And that's cool because like when you max out a social link, it reveals to the player that they knew you were a Phantom Thief the whole time, and you're like, oh, that actually caught me by surprise the first time. It probably shouldn't have. First link I maxed out was Yoshida, Taro Nosuke Yoshida. And he's just like, oh, I knew you were a Phantom Thief the whole time. It's too convenient. And you're like, oh, shit. So you're in jail, and your friends and your social links are trying to get you out. And they're doing anything they can to drum up attention and, you know, press people and, like, use the power of Sai, who is, like, one of your friends now, and to get you out of jail. And it finally happens. The Athenians February 13th? When a game started out like this, everyone kind of hated each other, or everyone had their own struggles, and seeing everyone so relieved to see the hero, the protagonist, you, the player, that was good enough. But then Morgana just walks in, and I thought that was one of the most powerful moments in the whole game, because till the very last moment, they did not let up on their characters being their characters. That when you finish their social links, they didn't just suddenly become like a bot that just says quotes that are like their personality, you know? Like Final Fantasy 13. Instead, Morgana walks in and they're like, what the fuck? Like, why are you here? And Morgana's like, well, I didn't die. It would have been awkward because we said goodbye already. And they fight. They fight again. At the very last, one of the last moments in the game, they start fighting again. And it is so strong. That is such a strong moment. Everything in the last like 10 hours of the game is strong enough already, but it having that experience of a friend returning in the game was really strong. Thankfully, Persona 5 has an actual happy ending. The ending of Persona 5 makes you think that you're going to be going off alone again, but it turns out that your friends are like, fuck no, we're coming with you, bitch, and they put you in a car, and it's really nice. And you all drive off into the sunset and everything's happy and beautiful music starts playing as it always does. I was not expecting like a genuinely happy ending out of that. Like, you might have to go back, but we're still friends, we're gonna hang out, and the ending is explicitly telling you that, which I thought was great. My only problem is that I didn't really get to know some of the characters as well as I could have. I feel like they didn't give you as much time to do the social links in this game, and maybe some of that is my fault. Maybe I spent a little bit too much time working on building up my charm because I'm a disgusting boy and I need my Makoto. They had really high stat requirements to start or finish a lot of the links, which is fine for like side characters, I think, but putting it on like Haru as like you can't even get past level 1 unless you have proficiency. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna use her in my party then because she can't baton pass. Which I ended up doing because I used everybody in rotation. It felt like I couldn't experience a lot of the story that way. I ended up looking at stuff on YouTube just to, you know, see what the fuck happened. I felt like the impact could have been greater if there was just a little bit more time to explore some of your social links. I understand why they didn't let you do it after you beat the game because, well, the metaverse is gone, unlike in Persona 4 where the Shadow World still exists. But having just a little bit more time, I think, would have been a smart move. Man, there's really a lot to talk about with Persona 5, but I do want to talk a little bit about some of the negatives I said, some of the comments you guys gave me and everything like that. I'm a little disappointed to see negative comments in regards to me saying that there should have been gay relationships in the game, especially for the sake of representation. I realize that they're just YouTube comments and some of them shouldn't be taken seriously, but try having a little empathy. That's all I'm really gonna say. Like if you're seriously ever fighting against that, I don't think you understand the full scope of everything that's going on and the hardships that a lot of people have to face with that. Because after all, it was just a suggestion of mine, not an agenda, if you would. I would have liked to explore that kind of thing in a game like this. I think it would have added a lot to the story, actually. And after all, like a character like the protagonist is a vessel. They're not a character. They're a character, they become a character through your experiences, but they are not inherently a character that will behave or function in a certain manner, you know? You dictate everything that they do with guidelines, obviously. Hell, you can even say, I like men to a shadow that you're fighting. So why not, man? Like, respect. Also, I learned via comments that I'm pretty stupid. Because I did not read the tutorial on the demon conversations where it says certain types of monsters like certain types of responses. That is 100% on me. It bugged me when I was playing, but I guess I won't have an issue anymore because I'll fucking read. I played like, I don't know, 5 hours in a New Game Plus before I realized I was like, this is too much for me right now. And it's weird. Right after I beat Persona 5, and I did a little bit of New Game Plus, I needed a palate cleanser. I needed to try another RPG out. So I picked up Tales of Berseria, and I played about 3 or 4 hours, and I was like, I don't know if I can play JRPGs again for a while, because it was that fucking good. It completely set a new standard, I think, for what we should expect in JRPGs, and I think that's insane. Like, that's an insane thing that just came out of my mouth, but I believe it. I really do. All in all, I think Persona 5 wraps up really nicely into, like, one of the best valued packages, let alone just, like, great experiences that has really ever happened in video games. I'm having hyperbolic statement of, like, all over the place today. It's great. Like, if we're just looking at the gameplay, it's not necessarily the most advanced game. It definitely has a lot of improvements to, like, the combat systems with the you know, turn press, baton passing, and all the extra stuff you can do that from Social Links. It sucks that, like, all the gun stuff is on Shinya, who frankly, I thought was the weakest one in the game. I only got like 4 in, and I just was like, I don't care. I just don't. Maybe I should give it another try and watch the whole thing, but you know, like his stuff with like instant knockdowns with a gun, I was like, oh, that's really good. I don't care. I would have rather had Haru. I couldn't even max out Futaba, man. Shit. But, like, the music, I need a fucking vinyl of that shit. Like, where's that at? Like I was saying, Rivers in the Desert is a good ass song, and like the credits theme also. Not immediately as catchy and grabby as Nevermore from Persona 4, but still like a solid track. But it definitely feels definitive. And I think that's something that a lot of Atlas games do really well. If you look at Tokyo Mirage Sessions that came out last year, you can really tell that it was like a stepping stone in between Persona 4 and 5. It takes a lot of the same stuff with like ditching the random dungeons, the social link stuff. Not exactly the way I thought it was going to play out. You still have to like waste time with your friends, but they allow you to like take people out on dates and stuff like that, so it feels a little less wasteful. And you get some cool ass freaking things for your room, like a poster Risei or like a t-shirt. There's an element of customization there that wasn't really in previous games that I like really appreciate. It's like the happiest ending that a Persona game's ever had. I was not expecting that. I don't think anyone was. But at the same time, like the journey, the rise and the fall of the Phantom Thieves, and everything that all the characters have to go through is something that'll stay with me forever, frankly. I just need some fucking posters. That's what I need. I gotta hit up some cons, get all the fucking anime prints I can find, Jesus Christ. I'm definitely gonna like pay close attention to the comments section of this video because it's something new. It was unscripted, maybe a little terrible, but I want to keep talking about this game. So let's get a discussion. Like, what elements of the game are things that you enjoy? What are things that you think I'm wrong about? Or, you know, let's just talk. Let's open a dialogue. Let's do it. If you like these off-the-cuff videos, let me know. I'm down to, like, try some more in the future for other games, like new stuff that comes out that, like, I have a lot of thoughts about that I can't really fit into, like, one concise video, especially when they pertain to spoilers, because I don't really want to spoil that for anybody. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, sticking with me. Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you guys next time.